Hello, hello, Nicole Holland here. Thanks for joining us. Today, I'm very excited to be joined by my friend, Leanne Ely. She began creating menu mailer on savingdinner.com in 2001 to help families get back to the dinner table. Within just a few years, Reader's Digest declared a new industry had been born, the menu planning industry, and Leanne was dubbed the mother of menu planning. Leanne's goal is to bring families closer together by enjoying healthy and easy to prepare meals. She does this by creating innovative menu planning products and education. Leanne and SavingDinner.com offer a wealth of valuable information, nutritional tips and tricks, delicious recipes, and all the tools you need to eat healthy and prepare delicious family dinners. Thanks for being here with us.
Thanks for having me. This is great.
Absolutely. So, take us back to before 2001 and what did you do before the meal planning inspiration?
Well, I had my own catering company, and it was a rip-roaring success right out of the gate. I started doing lots of. I cooked for lots of Saudi Arabian royalty, which was interesting, and then ended up in corporate. And this was in Newport Beach, California. I sold out to my partner when my father was diagnosed with cancer, and I just all of a sudden realized, I'm spending like, I don't know, 80 hours a week working, and there's got to be more to life than this. And so I sold out to her and, went on to get into sales and eventually had two kids and wrote a book that inspired me with my background in classic cooking, inspired me to take that cooking and make it healthier for a family and things that kids would eat and all of that. And wrote my first little book and honestly, I peddled it out of the back of my car. Went to all the health food stores in Southern California and sold it, did book signings like I was some kind of big deal with, the Kinko's book with the little, spine and the whole bit. So that's what started it all off. And then I won a cooking contest, got my first book contract, started menu planning. Actually, I did it in 2000. I did it on a free Yahoo group before I even had a website. So you could say I'm a little OG in this whole, this whole internet business.
That's fantastic. Yeah, and it's so funny, like, I think young people who listen don't realize it. I say young people.
Young
I
people.
remember, when I don't know, 30 years ago or so. And I would think, oh my gosh, these people are so out of touch. What did they ever do before, XYZ, whatever? Like, you didn't have TVs? How is that possible? And here I am, and I'm like thinking about, these kids who grow up now who don't know what a rotary dial phone is, don't even know what it's like to not have access to somebody 24/7 or
Oh,
like
sure.
to travel the world by figuring it out, not having the internet and all of the amenities that we have now. So it's pretty wild how far things have come so quickly. And now we can just, not where I live, but I just got back from New York, where anything you want is like at the click of a button,
Sure.
um, in terms of food, in terms of anything. But in 2000, things weren't, I mean, it's not like it's the dark ages, but it wasn't normal that everybody had a computer or access to internet. It wasn't normal that we got things other than pizza delivered, at least maybe not where I grew up, but maybe in California. But we didn't have like healthy meal services and things like that. So what was that like for you when you had this idea and you realized, you're overworking and there's got to be a better way? Um, how did you what was it like approaching the market, because there really was no market then? You created the market, right?
Right. Well, at that time, this is all post catering business. That's all done. I've got two little kids at home and all of that. And I approached it from the perspective of I was a freelance writer at the time, so I had a docket of customers, basically that I had to knock out all these products for, as well as I was a freelancer for a newspaper. So I was constantly on the go, but my favorite assignments were always, needless to say, the food ones, right? I mean, this is the girl who got my first Girl Scout badge was cooking. So it's just to put it in perspective, that's always been kind of my leaning. I love messing around with food. I think it's one of the most creative outlets there is. So when everything sort of came together and I won that cooking contest, I just out a lark. I mean, I just, threw this dumb recipe and it was do you remember those about.com websites that they had years ago? It was one of those about, and this gal had a very, I can't even remember the about what her subject was, to be honest, but she had like over 1,000 entrants into this cooking contest, and I won it. And it was the name of the cooking contest was Not Your Mother's Tuna Casserole, and you had to use one convenience food. And so I did this one recipe that I did for my kids that they absolutely loved. And they thought, I mean, they'd ask for it for their birthday. And it was just like this box of white macaroni and cheese, onion and tuna and crackers and on the top with some cheese mixed in. And it was just, it was quite tasty. And I wrote some snarky, kind of directions that went with it and why this was better and all this other stuff. And lo and behold, I won. And that's when I just started thinking, I could do this. I started writing for a woman called, she's called the Fly Lady, and she's still very uber popular and sort of almost a cult-like following of women who are trying to get their houses, organized. And she said to me, she's so sweet. She said, well, look, because I wrote a story about her, and she said, I help people get their houses together, but I don't do anything in the kitchen. My husband and I always go out to dinner, so write the food stuff. So I've been writing food stuff for her since 2000, still do. And that's kind of what, perpetuated this whole thing. We had a contest to just like unclutter as best you can. And so I came up with this idea, let's just do crock pot meals for the week. And I'll put a grocery list together for it. And everybody went crazy and asked for it. And I said, I can't do that. And she said, well, why don't you charge for it? And I went, oh yeah, that's a good idea. And so there you have it. That's how the whole thing started. And it was just a group. My first website, if you go back to the Wayback Machine, it was menumailer.net. It's hysterical. It's horrible. But you learn as you go. I mean, there was nobody teaching any courses, nobody telling you this is what a membership website should look like. Even though I was doing membership, I had no idea. Everything was done by hand. It was crazy. Spreadsheets,
Amazing. And
hmm
rudimentary at that time. I again, even
Horrible.
like
Yeah,
I love ew, it was so hard to convert me to Google from Microsoft. I was such a diehard Microsoft user. And then finally I moved to Google, and like I love their sheets and all their like in the cloud stuff. I remember when all that stuff came along. So it's just so interesting how you built this subscription business. So you were still writing, you were still doing other things to make a living. At
sure.
what point did your meal planning start affording you life?
Well, I mean, it was a weird time. I also, at that time, I auditioned for a radio show. I was living in North Carolina, and I auditioned for this drive time radio show in Southern California, going against Dr. Laura at the time. And I got it. So here we were packing everything up. I'm still trying to do these, I did everything myself, customer service, all the stuff. And so that was going at the time. I also had a book that I was doing on QVC. So I was flying to QVC and doing this book and doing my radio show, and then at night and homeschooling my kids. So I was ready to freaking lose my mind. And it just all of a sudden it just really took off. And as as the radio world would have it, after a year my show was canceled. I figured out a way to get back to North Carolina. I got divorced as well. And so I had to make this work because I knew I was going to be the only support for these kids. So just, not getting into my personal, life, but there was going to be no alimony or child support. So I just made it work. I just made it work. You figure out, desperation really can push those buttons and make things go. And that was also the golden age of the internet, because you'd send an email and presto, there you go. It's not like that anymore.
Wow, amazing. And so, how did things evolve then? When you lost the radio show, you went back to North Carolina. Were you were still, were you still getting an income from writing and from the book, from like other things, or was this it? Your online business was like it.
It was pretty much it. I did some speaking. I did sponsorship kind of things. I did a number of like satellite media tours. I got my first book deal, real book deal. I'd done a book deal with another publisher who basically took all my royalties. Is no longer in business. But I went, I got an actual agent and went with an actual literary house, a Random House. And that's when I did all the books. So at that point, it was books and my menu planning services. And it was taking off pretty well. Yeah.
Awesome. And
Yeah.
how has your menu planning service business evolved over the years?
Well, one thing that has really changed is, one of the things I think I've been kind of taken some pride in is that I'm very close to what my customers want, and it's really important for me to know. Well, like what's next? What do you want? And so, one of the biggest things that they said was they want more flexibility in the menus. I mean, I was writing these menus every single week. And so, the first thing we did was we added a low carb option. This is when low carb was really big in the early 2000s. And so I added the low carb. So we had the regular menu and the low carb menu. And then people started asking for, just all kinds of different things. And it finally evolved to the place where I hired my first software developer, and we created our own platform. And it's now called Dinner Answers. At the time, it was Menu Mailer, Premium Menu Mailer, because we no longer email menus. We just have them log in on the site. And that's how it worked. And we created this monster. And I say that because anybody who has never done software like me, I mean, I could tell you stories that could make the hair on the back of your neck go up. But I spent a fortune on this. It's terrific, and it's gotten to the place now where I'm very, very proud of it. But it took forever to get there. It was hard. I wouldn't even consider that a learning curve, because you can't, unless you are a software developer yourself, it's not a learning curve. What I would say though, it was a learning curve on what not to do and what not to hire for contractors. So that was something.
Very impressive. I know it can be so challenging. I think people don't realize how, I think there's a lot of people who think, oh, I'm going to build an app, or,
Oh
nowadays it just
gosh.
seems so simple. And it's like how many apps and software products fail compared to the ones that actually make it, and the people that can stick it out and continue and push through. And it's like it's definitely something to be proud of. And like you said, like learning curve, it's a funny word, because when you're not a software developer and you're working with software developers, it's like you have the vision, you have the idea, you know what you want to accomplish, but there's so much like translation, I think, that has to
Oh
happen
yeah.
between
It's
people
so
who speak
true.
different languages oftentimes,
Well, and you
literally
always
and
have to remember,
figuratively.
yeah, exactly. And you have to remember too, there's a front end and there's a back end. So your front end can look beautiful and the back end can be just an absolute disaster, or vice versa. And, being able to get those two things to mesh, you know, that's a small act of God.
So what's the most, I don't know if profound is the right word, but what's the biggest thing or the best move you made, I would say, to elevate your brand and your brand awareness?
I would definitely say books did it. And then working with some major brands, I worked with Starbucks, Jello, Vanity Fair, a bunch of different brands that really helped too, because it worked. The synergy was great. Um, the other thing is just the other part of it is just the educational piece, because I found out, and this is I think what usually happens in business. You think going in what it is that people need. And then you find out it's something completely different. So I was right about the menu planning thing, obviously. I mean, there's like how many menu planning sites now, right? That was correct. But the other thing is that people just really needed the education on just how to cook. I did not realize that, I was dealing basically with the generation that had zapped Hot Pockets forever. And so not so just, actually like chopping an onion was like, we got to teach this. So, and that's not, I'm not trying to demean my audience by any sense at all. It's just, things just weren't, home ec isn't taught anymore, and moms are busy. They haven't been teaching either, or they didn't learn themselves. So getting people back into the kitchen, and, the millennials love all their, the millennials rather love all their, like, ooh, look at my cool, kitchen, and look at my cool dining room table all set up. And then I'm watching them, chop an onion, and I'm thinking, oh, that's dreadful. Just learn how to do something. But there's a lot of skill involved that I had to bring people back to basics. So that was an interesting thing.
That's awesome.
Hmm.
And where do you see things kind of going over the next years? You've been at this for 18 years. What's sort of on the radar next steps?
Well, it's it's so funny that you asked me that. I just put out an email. It was probably right after you and I met at Baby Bathwater, and I put out an email just, because you know how it is. It's just like, I think too, as an entrepreneur, you get an itch for something like, ooh, what's new? What new thing can I do? And also my stage in life. I've got two grown children, one's married, and all of that, and I'm still super passionate about getting families back to the dinner table. I think nutrition is so important. Cooking's important. All of it's important. But there's more to me than that. And I've also noticed that I've collected along the years. I've got people who've been with me for 18 years. They've been with me that long. So they're, sitting there with empty nests as well. And I'm still helping them get back to the dinner table, which is interesting. So I sent out an email and just said, I am, one of my things is I'm so overwhelmed with all of the noise that's out there. And it's, there's these things called, you know Instagram models now, and there's all this. It's like these careers have been created. It just boggles my mind, and I'm thinking to myself, is that all there is? Is this, I mean, is this my end game? Go cook a chicken breast, and you go be an Instagram model, and I mean, it's just the insanity and the saturation point. It just hit me really hard. And I also had a big birthday, and so I sent out an email, just said, hey, I just had this birthday. I've got these grown kids, and what I'm looking at is like, what's my legacy? Is it going to be, cooking a piece of chicken, or what is my legacy, and where do I go in this part of my life, and how do I create that legacy? Live it now, not just leave something, but live it now. And I got bombarded with emails saying, whatever you want to do, just tell me and I'll go with you, because I feel like that too. And I think I think that there's a real lesson there, and that is that wherever we are, whatever season of life we're in, we have to keep looking for what is our purpose, because our purpose changes and it evolves as we evolve, and as our purpose in our lives evolve. I mean, I'm no longer having to make sure that backpacks are packed and they've got their lunches, and call me when you get there. I mean, I don't have to do that stuff anymore. So my priorities have shifted, and therefore reaching out to other women and being able to empower them and help them to reach their next thing is really where I want to go. So I'm creating a legacy right now, and we're doing a legacy event next year, 2019. And I've got some interesting women coming to that. I'm just super excited about that. I'm writing a book about it right now. My agents kind of pushed me into that. So that's my next thing. It's a big project.
Awesome.
Hmm.
And this, we're recording right now at the end of 2018, but we're not actually going to be going live with this episode. So my listeners are actually hearing this in 2019. So if there's anything else you want to share, awesome. Or if it's still a little bit too early, that's perfectly fine too. But I'm really curious about your legacy event and kind of what this looks like um, in physical terms about your next step, in addition to the book and the um, leaving something bigger. I don't know. I just had this like sense as you were talking about next steps. I thought, oh, I wonder if she's going to do like, culinary cooking tours around the world or something like in
Well, listen to
Italy.
you. That's part of it,
Is
actually.
it?
Yeah, it is. And I'm partnering with someone you probably know who to do wine tours and cooking tours together.
Mm,
And we're looking at doing that, in 2019. All these will be coming. I'll be sending out announcements as these events are ready. But we're looking at probably spring 2019 for the first one. And the thing, this is what I look at when you can participate in a culture and not just be a tourist, like actually participate, go into and see a winery that tourists don't see, like go in there and talk to the winemaker and have a barrel tasting, and then be able to go with somebody, take somebody, go into the marketplace and buy vegetables and things for that meal and help this 95-year-old mama from Italy who's going to be basically running the show, and have dinner and the wine with that. Can you imagine? That's
I
not.
can. That's
Yes,
like
you can. Of course you
I
can.
that's one of my favorite things.
Of course it is. I mean, it's phenomenal. I've done different things like that. I've experienced, amazing dinners abroad and things that people aren't. It's not your normal tourist thing. It's really getting into the culture and being able to really enjoy it and experience it, which is
Mm,
huge. And
yes.
yeah, I mean, who wants to do that? So that's part of it. But the legacy tour itself that we're going to do a legacy event, and who knows, it might even turn into a tour. And I've got two other women who are speaking with me, and I'll be announcing all of that later. We're actually getting together this in a couple of days here to just gel everything. But basically, what we want to do is show that legacy is something that that we live now. It's not something that we leave, and it's that it's not too late. That there's a lot of women out there who just figure that they've just got to suck it up and just deal with maybe some disappointing things that happened in their life, and we want to say no, no, you know change your mind on that. It's not over. If it was over, you wouldn't be here. And the fact that you showed up and are participating in this is huge. We'll probably have some workshops after that and master classes after that to go, dig deeper and really help people. But empowering women and seeing them, understand that they have their own little superpower. They just haven't tapped in, and especially women over 50. They just, that's not part of their curriculum, so to speak, growing up and when you were a kid in the 70s and the 80s and things, it's just a lot different. And now that we're in this culture that we're in and everything is so overwhelming and so much, it's nice to be able to, step back and say, hey, this can be the thing. And I also think, too, that, observing the internet culture that we've had and digital products and all of that, I think we're in a place now where people want I mean, it's fine. That's an adjunct, but somebody with skin on them, somebody that they can really relate to has become super important. And I understand that. We want relationships. Don't want just products. So
Absolutely. And I mean, you're speaking the same language here. Um, I this year I've really pivoted and am doing more live experiences with people, retreats in the vineyards. So, P.S. If you ever
nice.
want to come up to the Niagara
Hello.
region of Ontario for wine and farm to table and that kind of experience, let me know. We'll have to partner on something fun.
Absolutely. It'd be fabulous.
But yeah, it's I believe that as well. I think that it's with all the suicides and
Oh,
the
yeah.
depression and mental health. It's like, I think we have such expectations of ourselves. And as business owners, especially, we look at what other people are putting out there on Instagram or on Facebook or whatever. And there's this comparison that even the strongest person, I think, does.
Yeah.
And it's also, you know, people think, oh, when I get to this point, everything will be dandy. Oh, when I get to this point, everything will be
Mm-mm.
dandy. But the truth of the matter is, we all have gremlins and we all have imposter syndrome and all of that.
Mhm.
It doesn't matter who you are or how far you've come. It's easy to forget how far you've come sometimes and look at what's perceived as success from others. And I think that the more we can get human contact in
Mhm.
these kinds of experiences like you're talking about, um, the more the stronger we become as individuals and we become as a culture as well. And I'm excited
Absolutely.
about that for the future generations, because there was a time where it was like, man, I remember, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago or so, thinking, like maybe 15 years ago, like, man, well, maybe not 15, but yeah, like 10, 12 years ago, thinking, I don't even know if I want to bring kids into this world. Like, there's nothing good right now, like there's not nothing, but, there's a lot of hard things in the world. And I see that the more connected we become as human beings, like you said, with skin on our bodies,
Mhm.
um, the the more exciting things become, I think.
Oh, exactly. And you can relate to that more because you just you hit there's an oversaturation effect going on right now, and I think that's why there's this disruptor going on within, the digital, gig economy, and people are just, they've had it. I don't blame them. I don't blame them. I want real. I don't want the fake. I mean, like for example, you look at every single magazine cover we'll ever look at has been photoshopped within an inch of its life. I mean, one of the funny things to do is look at Photoshop fails, like when they like chop off somebody's arm or make their waist like 10 inches wide or whatever. But I mean, it's because it's that ridiculous, and that's the ridiculous world we live in, and we can't see the real. If we can't see the real on all the screens that we're looking at and all the magazines and everything that we're doing, then we've got to stop it, and we've got to get up close and personal and get in people's lives. That's how we affect change.
I love it. So I'm going to kind of bring us all over the place here. In terms of lessons learned over the past 18 years, what what do you feel have been your biggest, I don't know if ahas are or takeaways, or like, what are the things that have been instrumental in your growth that you may want to share with my listeners, both professionally and personally?
Well, they almost overlap. I think a strong interest and a strong commitment to personal development, and that shows up. It shows up in what you're reading, shows up in what you're listening to, and it shows up in what you do. So I've been always committed to. My first ever mastermind that I did was back in, I guess, 2000, I don't know, 4 or 5. I didn't even know they existed, to be honest. And when I found it, I felt like I found my people. Here's my tribe. Yay. There's other people but like me out there. It's a lonely thing, sitting behind your computer all day. You don't have a water cooler to go hang out with people when you work at home. But that's not a complaint. That's just, kind of the reality of what it is. So meeting people who are doing things that you're doing or doing them better, and like you're looking at them going, dang, that's a lot of smart people around me. I have to tell you, that has been a needle mover for me. And I've also expanded my friend base. So, we've all know that, you're the sum total of the 5 people you hang around with, right? And my friends have changed over the years, and they're super smart people. I have, my phone is like a general, pretty much a who's who of, in my world of people that I can text and say, hey, I'm struggling with this. Do you have 5 minutes? Help me, work this out. So that has been really huge. And personally, um, it's been really soul satisfying as opposed to the soul sucking that I've been feeling with the general overwhelm. Having that kind of a community has just meant everything to me. So,
So good.
mhm.
So good. I can't wait to see you again, speaking of community.
Yes.
So, yeah, so important. Awesome. So, is there anything I haven't asked you about that you feel would be of value to share? Again, as a business owner in your own personal journey, um, as a leader who's looking forward to the next years and the next, I think like you, I really do think that we are about to shift from this overwhelm of information. I think it'll still be there, but people are looking more for that connection. So, any
Mhm.
predictions or ideas or anything that I haven't asked you about you'd like to share?
Well, I mean, if I were going to make predictions, I think there's going to be a big change in the digital economy. What they did in the GDPR, for example, in Europe, that's coming here to the United States. It's just a matter of time before we get walloped with that. So people's personal information is something that they don't want to be, necessarily retarget. I mean, I don't know about you, but I get the whole retargeting thing, but have you ever just been, kind of freaked out that something's been following you around online, like
You know what?
that pair of boots from Nordstrom or something?
I think I've just kind of gotten numb to it, but it did before I started working online. I was terrified for a lot of reasons to be online and to
Hmm.
be public. But yeah, it's like sometimes I'll notice something that like I didn't even do anything with it. I didn't even look things up. I just had like an idea about something. And the next thing you know, I've got ads coming at me. I'm like, that's
Come
just so
on.
flippin'
Yes,
bizarre.
I
Yeah.
know.
But I
Well,
also
yeah.
feel like I know like a lot of people will put things out there about how to protect yourself, it's like I'm 43 years old. I've been online for more than a day. I I kind of I kind of know all of my information is out there, and if somebody wants to do something bad, it's like they're going to do it. I don't
Right.
know.
Yeah, you just do the best you can to protect yourself. But, I still say that, because of everything, I mean, we have to look at what they're doing in Europe. They're really protecting people's data now. And it's hard for us, to market to them, right? But it's coming here to the United States. And I mean, they are actively doing this. It's so funny because I've been reading about this, and then 60 Minutes just did a piece on it. And I was watching this and I went, uh-oh, here we go. So it's going to change the way we do things. It has to change the way we do things. And I think that's one of the reasons why, too, that making a slight pivot and doing things that maybe in smaller groups. I mean, I do workshops in my home quarterly, and there's only 10 women here. That's it. That's all I can take. And we have lunch together. I mean, it's a lovely, lovely time, but it's a personal interaction, and I just think that we're starting to move that way. Yeah, I'm going to do larger events and whatever as well. And I love speaking, so I mean, I'm like throwing my hat back in the ring. I've stayed off stages for a few years now, but I'm back. And honestly, at the end of the day, if we have the opportunity to connect with somebody and just help make their lives just that much better, we've won, and they've won, and we both have gotten something that we needed, and we need each other. We need the connection, and we need the community.
I love it.
So there.
So there.
Yeah,
Beautiful. So, we can wrap up now, but I definitely want to make sure before we do that my audience knows where to go to continue the conversation with you, to get more from you, to find out about the legacy stuff coming up, to get those dinner plans, meal plans.
definitely.
Where, what should they do? Where should they go?
Well, if they go to savingdinner.com, there is, you can just sign up for the newsletter. We'll send you a week of menu plans. And there's every style that we have. You can pick and choose what you want. You can use them all. I don't care, whatever you want to do with them, but it's there. And you'll also get, I send out occasional updates, personal pages from my journal. I share that on occasion. And I'm not one of these, see everything kind of a thing, but things that just seem to be like, kind of lodged in my soul or craw or whatever you want to say. And I share all of that. And definitely any upcoming things will be there too. So that's how you find out.
Beautiful. So thank you
Yay.
so much for being here
Oh,
today.
Nicole, it was
Sure.
fun. I loved it. Thank
Me
you.
too. It's nice to see you virtually and
Mhm.
get some words with you. And I'll look forward to the next time we see each other in person as well.
Absolutely.